So you talk about we are a rationalizing species.
Yeah.
That links to a lot of stuff I've had to learn, unfortunately, about trauma and how wounded people are. And
Mm.
I'm wondering if you have thoughts on that, because as leaders, we have to deal with, we have to
Yeah.
serve, because you're talking about being a servant leader, which
This
I
is we're in
fully endorse,
service,
agree.
fully service.
But we have to, and you also talked about being very aware of the other person after we're aware of ourselves.
Mm.
So more and more, we are working with people who are really wounded
Mm.
and they do rationalize. And some of them have a lot of trouble just saying, "Oh, I'm sorry I did that wrong. Yeah, now I understand. I'll do better." Instead, they're like, "Well, the reason I did this is blah, 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 blah." But whoa, wait a minute. You don't have to justify yourself. What I want you to do is own it.
Mm.
And then we just move on. So what are your thoughts on that as a leader, trying to be a servant leader? And we're really kind of working with the walking wounded,
Yeah.
including ourselves, by the way. You talked
Yeah.
about knowing ourselves. I got my own wounds. I grew up with two loving parents, and I didn't realize until a few years ago, at 67 years old, a few years ago, more fully, they really hurt me in a lot of ways. I don't hold it against them. They
Mm.
did their best, but in trying to do their best, they made some major mistakes,
Yeah.
and my life would have been very different if they had been able to be healthy. So, any thoughts on that?
Well, I
Just a
think
small little topic.
that's true. Yeah. Okay. Right. Where do we start? Well, I think you start with love, right? You start with love, and I think we don't talk about love enough in the workplace. Mostly because if you do, you get a phone call from HR, and you say, "What are you doing? Can't do that. Can't love." You say, well, actually, there are, C.S. Lewis talks about four different sorts of love, and you have eros, which is romantic love, which is the one you probably don't want in your workplace unless you're married to one of them. You have
Agreed.
philia, which is the friendship. You have storge, which is the brotherly, and then you have agape, which is this divine, the love of the creator for his creation, and the love that we have to show for the people in our care. And it's the good will, the willful desire for other people's success, this magnanimity that we have to show and put the other person at the center of our universe, which once we have healed ourselves, because if we do not, we bleed all over other people. Okay?
Mm,
If
yeah.
you've got a big cut in your arm, fix it before you get out in public because you're going to make a mess everywhere, right? Don't do that. Heal yourself before you can go out and deal with the people around you. Look after yourself, fit yourself up, get fit for whatever it is you're doing. And then once you've decided that you're going to put these other people at the center of your universe and dealing with them and their situation, I think it's recognizing that so many people have never had, you call it the loving parents, it's it is the parental figure, and I recognize many occasions that I was a father figure for other people. And when I started leading people, I wasn't particularly old, but I recognized that I was being seen as this, even by people who are older than me, because you're put in a position of delegated authority. And humans are, again, irrational when it comes to authority. Somebody is in power because of whatever reason. You put a white coat on, oh, you must know what you're doing. Here, look at my leg. What? We do this. It's just in our little heads because of hierarchies and family structures and whatever. That's the clique. That's how kings work and popes and priests and hierarchies. You're in this position. And because you're there, people look to you and they open up to you and they expect things of you. And because they've never genuinely, many people have never really had a good relationship with their own families or had someone to hold them accountable, they don't know that by taking ownership, exactly as you said, of their mistakes, it's good for you. That recognizing this is the wisdom that you're seeking. You seek
Yeah.
wisdom, you seek knowledge, you seek experience, and you need reflection. And again, my wise little son, when I was talking about the definition of wisdom, I said it is exactly experience, sorry, it's knowledge with experience applied and reflection on how it worked. And that's wisdom. And he said, no, it's not. I said, okay, Mr. 10-year-old philosopher, what do you think it is? And he said, well, you need to share it. If you don't share it, you are sitting in a mountaintop meditating, and that's very nice for you. Good for you. You're wise, but nobody else gets any benefit out of it. So you then sharing this knowledge, experience, wisdom, and reflection with people who necessarily, again, need someone to hold them accountable. But this is the technique. There is skill in this. And your parents, bless them, like all parents, me included, make it up as you go along because there's books coming out the nose and none of them are applicable because every kid's are different. Every kid's different. Every situation's different. Every business situation is different. But there are some rules of the road. There are tools and techniques and there's language and there's patterns you can use that don't project on people, that don't ask the wrong sorts of questions at the wrong times. It's like, don't ask people why. Don't ask them why. Why did you do that? What do you mean, why? Ask them what happened. Or even better, help me understand what happened.
Yeah.
Because that's putting it on me. You've just reframed the question. You've taken all the steam and the fire out of the situation and you've turned it into a simple interrogatory. It's not an accusation. I'm not saying, David, why did you do that? I'm saying, ideally, I observed, David, that when you were talking to Claire, you raised your voice quite loudly. Now, the impact of that was that Claire doesn't really want to work with you anymore. Can you help me understand what's going on? That's
Yeah.
it. That's a technique. That's a parenting technique. It's a leadership technique. It's you pick up these things as you go, or you don't. And typically people don't.
Yeah. And so once again, I've got my mind's flowing. But my brother said I'm like a dinosaur, big body, small brain. So I probably won't remember everything. The you brought up the love piece, okay?
Yeah.
And have you heard? I first heard it from Danny Silk, but I'm sure it's out there from other people. There are two major emotions.
Hmm.
There's love, and then there's an opposite one. Have you heard that? What the opposite is?
I would say it's fear.
Exactly. And you're the first person that's answered that correctly. And so, what I want to emphasize to the audience is that what you said was when you bring love into your leadership role, it is not the eros. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Uh,
Not romantic. It's
not
not romantic.
romantic. Not romantic. That's totally inappropriate. Okay. Unless, of course, your spouse works with you. But even that, it's not the workplace. It's not the place for it. But love then brings all the other fruits. Okay.
Mhm.
Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, etc.
Corinthians 16 or
Fear,
something. Mhm.
yeah, yeah, you're right. 4:16, yeah, 4:6, four,
Or
six, and
six, yeah.
7.
I was
Yeah,
close. I was close.
yeah, yeah. It's all right. You had the numbers, and I can't remember most of them most of the time anyway. But the other thing is, think about fear. So we're dealing with people who are wounded. You don't necessarily you'll see fear like fear when they won't own something, like I brought up earlier. They may have been in a verbally, emotional, abusive situation or physically or sexually abusive. They may have been in some type of abusive situation where when they admitted something, or even if they didn't, they got verbally abused or emotionally abused. And so it just doesn't feel safe because their self-esteem is so low to admit something. So the fear leads to anger, depression, anxiety, and some other behaviors that are very unhealthy. And we just need to be aware of this. We don't need to diagnose things,
Yeah.
but we need to be think of, okay, well, this person's behaving this way. That's not a healthy behavior. I don't necessarily know why, but this may be part of this. It looks like they've got a wound that's causing them to behave X. And I love your approach. I teach the same thing, and it's hard for some
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
to do
It's
that
not.
question
Uh-huh.
because, particularly if you've ever done any of the DISC behavioral stuff. Okay, I'm like 100% on the D.
Mm.
So hard charging, jump to conclusions,
Yeah.
solve any
DI.
problem.
Yeah.
You're the same way, yeah. So yeah,
Definitely.
and so it's just like it's faster and easier for me to just tell you what to do than it is for me to say, "Oh man, I noticed this." Like you said, what was going on there? That didn't seem to work very well.
Mm.
But I've learned. It took me into my 60s to learn this, to behave that way. So hopefully you and I, and you're much younger than I am, can help people learn this when they're younger.